I was cleaning up an old MacBook to sell when I came across a modification I did to it almost 10 years ago. It certainly made my MacBook the coolest in the class at the time. I gave it a custom, multicolored backlit keyboard, as if it was some kind of gaming machine. I kid of course, but I thought it looked pretty cool. I've done this with a few other MacBooks over the years, but it got me thinking, is it still possible on a newer Apple Silicon MacBook? And would it look as good as it did on the now ancient unibody MacBook Pros? I have here an M1 MacBook Air that I'm more than happy to experiment with, so let's find out together. This one has already been put through thorough repair, as when I first bought it, it had a smashed LCD that I painstakingly replaced, a video of which I will link as a card. So it's time this MacBook undergo another round of disassembly to fit this modification. The modification itself is relatively easy if you have the know-how on disassembling a MacBook. I'll start by removing the 10 pentalobe P5 screws on the base before it's unclipped to reveal the internals of this M1 MacBook Air. The majority of this laptop is taken up by the battery, with just a small sliver at the top pertaining to the logic board, which doesn't contain a cooling fan. Before beginning any work, I'll disconnect the battery using a pry tool to unlock the lever. To be able to access the back of the keyboard, we essentially need to remove everything inside the top case assembly. Starting with the speakers, each speaker has one Torx screw, one connector, and one piece of stretch release adhesive. The adhesive is just like that of any iPhone. It even snaps off like one too. Jokes aside, when they work, they make a mess-free removal process. Just maybe remove the screw last. The right side speaker cable is attached below a separate bracket that needs to be removed first. One enemy to this adhesive is it's more likely to snap if you pull it out at a 90-degree angle than if you were to pull it straight. Which is why in an iPhone I'd always remove the speaker and Taptic engine before removing the battery. But on this MacBook there isn't any way to gain clearance at the base of the tab, so it snapped off too. After retrieving it, I found moving it to the side allowed me to reduce the angle and allow it to be released as intended. Under each speaker is a screw securing the back plate of the battery. But before you get too excited, there's still 6 stretch release adhesive tabs securing the bottom section. However, its bond is not as strong as some of the adhesive Apple's been known to use. Compared to the Retina MacBooks, this battery replacement is a breeze. The adhesive used in old MacBooks should have been criminal. It was actually a risky procedure trying to pry the battery out without puncturing it. Once the trackpad and keyboard cables are unplugged from the logic board, the battery is free to come out. The battery is secured to a metal bracket, eliminating the possibility of pry damage while also giving it structural rigidity. Proceeding, we need to detach the headphone daughter board and Touch ID flex cable. On the other side, the USB-C ports need to be unplugged. This is something Apple gets right with its modern laptops, replaceable USB-C ports. It's a feature that I wish other laptop manufacturers would follow. Next to that is the microphone flex cable, which needs to be unlatched along with 2 antenna wires. There is now 6 screws securing the logic board to the top case, one of which I could loosen but not remove. For the stubborn screw, I tried slightly lifting the board to apply pressure to help it unscrew. However, the board won't come out till the display's cable is unplugged from the LCD. We're almost there, just a bracket, antenna, and Touch ID power button are left to remove. Like the Touch ID iPhones and iPads, the hardware is paired to the logic board of this laptop, so we need to be very careful removing it. In fact, it's why I've chosen to remove it in the first place. It's not preventing us from accessing the keyboard, but its tiny fragile cable is looming on the edge of the keyboard and could easily break off. The last component to detach is one of the 3 microphones which is adhered to the rear of the backlight filter. There is now just 3 standoff screws and we can begin prying up the backlight layer. It's lightly adhered around the perimeter of the keyboard as well as in several sections of the middle. We want to remove this piece without damaging it, as this is what we'll be modifying to achieve this customization. Of course, we must not forget to unplug its flex cable connecting to the trackpad before lifting it free from the top case. Underneath, we can see the back of the keys. It's disappointing to see Apple still using rivets to secure it. I've replaced a few MacBook keyboards before and can say it's one of the worst repair jobs on any Apple device. Thankfully for us, we don't need to remove the keyboard. The backlight layer is what's illuminating the back of the keys. For every MacBook made, those LEDs are white. But with a simple trick, we can change them to any color and combination we'd like. Using cellophane. While it might sound rudimentary, not only is it the easiest way to do this, but it allows you to design it however you like. I've done a few different designs previously, from a solid color to RGB done in thirds. I want to make the function keys and numerical numbers a different color to the main keys, as well as some of the other buttons like Enter, Shift, and the arrow keys separate again. I have chosen purple, green, and red. I intentionally left out blue as I found when illuminated, it looks too close to white. Once you have an idea on the design you want, you just mark and cut it to size. The possibilities are endless. You could even make every key an alternating color if you really wanted to. Then each piece can be stuck into place with small pieces of tape, being sure not to cover any of the keys as we don't want the tape to cause any uneven lighting. When I showed this modification off all those years ago, some were concerned with airflow and cooling. Mac laptops don't use the keyboard as an intake, so this modification has no effect. Not that this laptop has a fan or intake anyway. But there's an issue. There's holes through this backlight filter for a few screws and one of the microphones. I easily cut around the microphone hole, but for the smaller screw holes, I found poking them out with a sharp tool worked best, as the drill bit tended to grab and crease the cellophane. But with that, our backlight filter is complete. This is purely a light filter, so while it doesn't look factory made, when we install this filter back into the laptop, you'll never see any of this. While we have access to the back of the keyboard, now is a great time to clean the underside of the keys, just being careful of the tiny fragile traces running between them. It is for this reason I'm using air and a cloth rather than a brush, which could tear one of these traces. Now it's time to replace the adhesive for the backlight filter before it goes back in. Aligning the keyboard backlight, it can be pressed into place before we work on getting all the other components back in. The holes we punch through are sufficient and allow for the screws for this bracket and the standoffs to be attached. I'll work on getting the logic board fitted before attaching the backlight cable back to the trackpad. Then the microphone, USB-C ports, and antennas can be plugged into the logic board. The Touch ID sensor is next. Carefully positioning it, it can be fixed into place with its 6 screws. Preceding that, the headphone jack board can be fastened into place. And of course, the LCD cable. For the battery, I don't have any official replacement adhesive strips, but what I do have is a drawer full of iPhone adhesive. This one is from an iPhone 6s Plus. It'll do if we cut it down to size. Plus, it'll work just like the original if we need to replace the battery in the future. I started by cutting each strip into its own piece and then cutting it in half to give us the 6 required pieces. Now I just have to cut them all to length and get them attached to the battery. Removing all the protective film, we can install it into the laptop along with its 2 screws. With the speakers, I'll use a small amount of adhesive. I'm not sure why Apple didn't just opt to use another screw to secure the speaker. There's clearly enough room. Maybe it has to do with sound quality. Either way, I'll reinstall it as it was before. Once everything is back into place and cleaned up, it's time for the battery and keyboard to be reconnected. Then it's just the case of reattaching the back panel. And we're done. So this is it, an M1 MacBook Air with a custom backlit keyboard. While it's no gaming laptop, it's added a touch of personality to this device. A classic MacBook mod for sure, but it still works on these newer devices. However, with less spacing around the keys and less travel, there's less light seeping out, so the effect isn't as noticeable as it was on the older unibody MacBooks. However, it's still noticeable in a dark room. Let us know what you think below. And on that note, this has been a Hugh Jeffries video. If you like what you saw, consider subscribing and check out the custom tech playlist for more videos just like this one. And if you're looking for any used devices, be sure to check out my online store, link for which is down in the description. That's all for this video, and I'll catch you guys next time.